But I think more than that is being able to approach stressful situations with clarity and with calm.
Right.
Because if you're a leader and you are leading a team, or you are a leader trying to close business, or you're trying to do something client facing, if your energy is chaotic and you are all over the place, other people will see that and they're going to be like,
That's
"Ooh,
right.
I don't want that. I don't want to be part of a team that's chaotic. I don't want to be part of, you know, I don't want to be part of a business that isn't organized."
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Your Customer, Your Success. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by the incredible Simona Costantini, a powerhouse in the world of podcasting and entrepreneurship. Simona is the founder and CEO of Volt Productions, a full-service podcast production agency, and the passionate voice behind two outstanding podcasts, Happiness Happens and As It Relates to Podcasting. Simona is also the Chief Marketing Officer of Northflow, an industry-shifting content management system. Simona's journey is nothing short of inspiring. With over a decade of experience in corporate marketing, public relations, and client experience, she's built a career on empowering entrepreneurs to not just launch their dream podcasts, but to truly elevate their goals and their podcast. Simona, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you.
Hi, Gary. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here with you.
Oh, it's awesome to have you. Hey, somebody might be watching this going, what? Isn't this a customer experience or customer success podcast? Well, we're going to get to that point. We're going to talk a little bit at how the parallels between podcasting and customer experience and running your own company kind of mesh together. But before we do that, why don't we have you just give us a quick bit about yourself and how you got here and where you are today?
Absolutely. There's so many parallels, so I can't wait to dive into them. But right off the bat, I started podcasting at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, with the launch of my podcast called Happiness Happens. And it was really like, it was really a podcast that was built out of purpose, but also out of self-discovery. I was just trying to figure out in life, why did I feel so unhappy and so unfulfilled? And I think that this is something that a lot of people can relate to in life, in business, in their corporate job, in whatever it is that they're doing. There's a sense of unfulfillment that comes with that. So I started the show to fulfill that purpose. And as I was doing the podcast, I was still working my corporate job. I worked in At that time, I was working in marketing, so product marketing, events, and that kind of stuff, and then shifted to the internal communication side for a major airline in Canada, where I learned how to do video production. So I did a lot of video production. I would write for the president. I did all kinds of events, and I also did corporate communications in terms of emergency comms. So if there was ever a crisis or an emergency, I was brought in on that team as well. So it was a really interesting job. And it taught me a lot of stuff. I learned a lot about lighting, video production, producing, audio engineering, like all of those different pieces, because we got to do all of that when we worked in corporate. And then after that, the world shut down like it did in 2020.
Right.
And that's how I just describe it. Like the world shut down. And because it was an airline, I lost my job. And I did a very, very, very small stint in customer. I was the customer experience manager for a real estate company. And my goal, my purpose was to build out the client experience for the customers of the real estate company. I did that for a very short amount of time and moved far away from that job, and was kind of really inspired to start my own project, like my own podcasting agency at that point. And I had been freelancing on the side. I had my podcast, my Happiness Happens show. And I wanted to just see. I was like, okay, the world is like, the universe has opened up this particular moment in my life to allow me to step into this new phase and this new era. And let me just see if I can, if I can do this. So I brought all of my freelancer clients into the agency. I gave them a little bit of a better rate for jumping over to be with me exclusively. And then I built my business off of referrals. After that, it was probably March of 2021, where I just decided to go full force. I launched my podcast launch services. I sold out in 72 hours, and we have never stopped since.
Oh, good for
So
you.
talk about trusting the universe and like the faith in the plan, but also all of the experience that I learned in all of the roles that I had previously are some of the founding elements of the business that I have now today. And so now I have 2 podcasts, Happiness Happens, and as it relates to podcasting, I speak all over about podcasting,
And
video production, and all of the above. And I just feel like I get to do what I love every single day, which I'm really grateful for. And from the comfort of my home office and not having to battle the Canadian winter or snow.
we will not talk about the temperature today. As you can see, I'm wearing a jacket in my own house. It's but you are all over the place, which is how I found you and got to know you. And just through that, right? You were doing it was a podcast kind of networking event, right?
Yes,
Last winter, actually.
it was. It was the one that is the one in kind of like New Jersey area, and it was
Right.
super fun. And we connected from there, and
Pod
we've been
Experience or whatever it's called now.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know
yeah,
if they've changed
yeah,
it, but
yeah.
yeah. So there, well, that's what I was dabbling in this, and I didn't have the guts to do it, but you and your team have given me the guts to do this. So thank you, truly. So let's get to the kind of meat of the questions here.
Mm-hmm.
And let's kind of draw that parallel. So, what are the parallels between building a loyal podcast and creating, the customer experiences for your clients in at Volt Productions?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I love this question. I'm also going to relate it a tiny little bit to some of the experience that I had when I was working in corporate as well.
Um,
And when you think about a message in general, whatever message that you have, whatever message you're communicating, there's someone that's going to be on the receiving end of that message. That's your audience, that's your listener, that's your team, right? That's your clients, that's the people who are employees of your company or what have you. And there's so many parallels in between both of these. And one of the major ones is, for me, coming down to values. So how do you want people to feel when you communicate with them? I think is a big one. And I think that's at the center of a lot of the culture shifts that we see, a lot of the conversations that have started to change. But it's really important to think about, how do you make people feel when you communicate with them? So I've always looked at this from 2 points of view. When I'm communicating with my audience, or if I'm communicating with clients, or if I'm communicating with my team, or when I was in corporate communicating with the team and the audience that was receiving the message that we were putting out there, how do you want them to feel on the receiving end of your message? So then I go back down to, okay, well, what are our own values within ourselves, right? And I have some values that I have. Kindness, care, and connection are my top 3. If you can lead with kindness, you can add care into your message, and then you can connect in a deeper way. When you genuinely care about other people, they feel that. People
right.
feel heard and listened to and understood. And I think that's a really important piece for building a relationship with somebody. Because at the end of the day, when we have a podcast, we have a show, we have a blog, we have a newsletter, whatever the medium is, it's the message that you're sharing within that medium. But then when it lands, it's, how does the person feel when they're receiving that message? That's the difference between someone wanting to be a part of your circle even further, or
Mm-hmm.
distance themselves. Do they see themselves in you? Do they see themselves in the message that you're communicating and that you're sharing? So I'm going to start there. I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and when you work for a large company like I have, you lose sight of that a lot, right? And you're
Yes.
trying to keep their client, and I had some big influential clients, but that kind of connection isn't maybe what you're striving for, because you're dealing with so much money,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very transactional, and it's very hard to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And but you, in the end, what you're really trying for is that relationship that you could build and keep and grow for a number
Mm-hmm.
of years. And in my business, that's very important, because there are other services that you can provide to your customer and your customer base. And we would use the word client, just so I don't confuse everybody. I go back and forth on the podcast, but
Yeah.
we use client. And there's investment management services or securities lending or things like that you could deepen that relationship with. And so if you make that connection and build those relationships, that is what some of us were going for, but it is not easy to do that in a large company.
No.
Um,
But you know what's interesting though too, Gary? I think that it's really important to consider, look at how people are. Look at the environment that corporations create. And I'm not saying that they're all bad, but I think if you want to shift culture, if you want to shift client relationships, if you want to create more meaningful client relationships, it starts with your own self as the leader. How do you show up to support your team? How do you show
right.
up to support your clients? Because, and you know this because we've been working together, on your podcast and all of the different pieces things that you've created. And there's been tech glitches. We've had things that have happened. And I like to think that even if something goes wrong, because of the relationship that we have developed from this type of this type of space, the relationship that we have developed allows for more forgiveness, right? So we're a
True.
little bit more tolerant when things don't go 100% to plan. We're a little bit more understanding if someone is having a bad day. So when you look at your own emotions, and this is a lot of what I've learned from Happiness Happens, my first podcast, when we look at our emotions, how are we making sure that we're showing up as the very best version of ourselves all the time? And that's not possible to do every single second of every single day,
Mm-hmm.
but it allows you to bring a certain level of awareness. So then now you communicate your message and people feel like they're cared for, right? If that's important to you.
True.
Everyone's going to have different values, right? Everyone's going to have a different thing that they're trying to communicate. But I sit on the condo board for the condo that I live in.
Good luck with that.
You know what? It's really
That's a whole episode
interesting.
right there.
It really is. But I'll tell you this right off the bat, just from a communication point of view. I am someone who I'm gonna have a conversation with someone in the exact same way. Like I'm not gonna change who I am just to fit somebody else's perception or feed into somebody else's quote unquote bad day. So I was meeting the condo person for the very first time. And she's lovely. Okay. And we were having a conversation, and she was like half on camera, half of her face is showing. And I was like, hi, like, how are you? Are you having a good day? Da-da-da-da-da-da. It's like we forget to be a human.
Right.
And so if you're asking for people to be part of your community, if you're asking for people to do business with you, that you don't make them feel like they're valued or cared for, why would they do that? You can go and get podcast production services anywhere. You can buy a service anywhere. It's the relationship that you build with other people that influences the growth of the continued partnership and the continued relationship, in my opinion.
And I wrote, and one of the reasons I'm doing the podcast is I'm not particularly fond of writing, and I do have a blog, but I find it easier just to do this and talk. It's more natural.
Yeah.
But one of the articles I wrote was what's in a name, and the simple act of using somebody's name to make them feel like a valued customer is, I think, a lost art. In growing up, like my mother wanted to be like the best customer she thought she was everybody's best customer. She went to the deli, she went to the grocery store, she went to Mrs. Marra, and it was Mr. or Mister back in those days, right? And I go into these stores now, they don't even know who the hell I am.
Of course.
And I've been living here for 10 years. Even like the bakery, we've all our birthdays together. We were in there like every other week buying a cake, buying this, our anniversary, and nobody knows who the hell I am, or just like, hey, Gary, how you doing? But let me tell you, the difference. My son's baseball coach. We have a coach that we go to for training and things like that. Not that he plays necessarily on a team, but he knows these kids so well and knows their strengths, their weaknesses, and just he greets everybody with a smile, right? And he greets all the parents with a smile and the kids, and he's so positive with them and gives them that positive reinforcement that he actually cares about their development as a player and as a leader, that it's a no-brainer that I take my kids to his clinics
Exactly.
around the whole calendar. Summer,
Exactly.
winter, we're going tonight. It's going to be 10 degrees out. We're going to practice in January with him. But I think
that's
that
the
is
energy that you want to teach him.
Right.
It's key. It's really, really important. It's something that a lot of people forget, is like how to be human in business, in podcasting. There's this this idea that everything needs to be so perfect and polished. And yeah, to some respect, you want to make sure that the message that you're sharing is clear, right? But the idea of perfectionism, you're never going to achieve it. So why? It's better to start and then to grow and to continue to evolve than to have everything be 100% perfect right off the bat. Now, of course, there's exclusions to that. We don't need to go into that. But anyways, that's just an additional thought.
Yeah, right. And I have not talked golf yet on my podcast, which is a minor miracle. This is recording number 6. But there is a book, Golf is Not a Game of Perfect. It is the same kind of concept, right? Where you're never going to perfect golf. You're always going to hit bad shots, etc. But that's kind of the metaphor that, you keep striving for it, but you got to accept the failure and keep moving. Okay, so now that you've built these relationships, how would you balance things like listener feedback with your creative direction, right? Because you're going to build these relationships, but you might, people might want to take it in a little bit different direction. So how do you
Mhm.
manage that? How do you deal with that?
That's a really good question. And I think that, I would like to assume or I would like to think that if someone is listening to your podcast or listening to your show, it's because they already like the content that you're talking about and the content that you're sharing. Now, where this becomes a little bit key is opening up the conversation for listeners to be able to make suggestions. Oh, I would love for you to talk about this particular topic. You could talk about, can you talk about topic A, topic B, topic C. Can you talk about these three different things at some point? You know what I mean? So I think that there's a lot of space and a lot of room for you to be able to take that listener feedback and put it into your production schedule, into your plans for your show, and so on. Because if listeners are telling you that they want to hear something, it's because that's what they want to hear and learn more about, right?
Hmm.
So you, as the host, you, as the creator of the show, have the opportunity now to tap into your audience, what they actually want to hear and listen from you. And you can take that and you can create some really powerful content with that. And then another thing that I like to do is I like to take a look at my analytics. So I take a look at my analytics and I check and I see which podcast episodes perform the best
Hmm.
and which topics resonate most with people. Because if you don't hear back from your listener, if you don't have people who are sending you messages saying, oh, hey, I love this episode. Can we hear more about X? Always looking to the data to help you guide and to help guide you and to help you shift your conversation and your narrative into what they want to hear more of. The key, though, becomes like staying with your topic, staying with your show framework or outline, and weaving those topics in. Obviously, if it feels like too far left field, you're not gonna include it if it doesn't make actual sense.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that there's room for both.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I think, I'm one who's not, I'm trying not to be too narrow in my focus.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to explore a few different topics and a different approach to customer experiencing and customer success, and include people who are out there practicing, not like I say, not in the necessarily the vein of somebody out there measuring NPS scores all day every day. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I'm trying to get people who are in customer centric businesses like yourself, like Samantha, who I had, and who was a financial planner and
Mm-hmm.
consultant, and get people who are putting this stuff into practice for real
Mm-hmm.
without the fancy, metrics and the AI and all that stuff, which is all great
Yep.
stuff. But, I don't think you're really have a fancy AI tool in your budget anytime soon.
Me personally?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I use AI all the time for all kinds of different things. I
Well,
use like
yeah, simple.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like nothing too crazy. I mean, I use ChatGPT, but of course, the more you use these different tools, the more they start to learn what you're like. They learn you, right? They learn you, they learn your voice, they learn what you're looking for. But what's interesting as well? I was thinking as you were saying that you can go really narrow into a topic. Like, let's say you have a podcast about knitting, right? Your podcast about knitting is going to be more narrow in style. A podcast like this makes sense that it's a little bit more broad. It makes sense that there's different types of topics. But you might find in a year from now, you know what? I really like talking only about this one specific thing. And you might shift, right? So when I started Happiness Happens, I was doing solo episodes. They were all solo episodes of things that I was learning in the podcast. It's things that I was learning about my own self, about emotions, about fear and shame and judgment and guilt and this and that and all that, right? But then the conversation started to shift. Then I started to interview business owners to understand how they created the life that they had. And then from there, I was like, you know what? I want to go a level even deeper. So now on that show, I interview people to understand solely and specifically what happiness means to them. And that is the conversation that we have on the podcast. Now it's on hiatus currently, and I'm going to be relaunching it in 2025 with a totally different focus. So it's okay to start a little bit more broad and then find yourself in a spot where you are a little bit more narrow, because having different conversations creates more awareness in your world, gets you to learn about new things or think about things differently than you may not have thought before. And then you might want to explore conversations that are a little bit more specific, right? So I feel like having and hosting a podcast has been one of the most unexpected personal like self-development tools that I've ever had in my entire life. I wouldn't have anything right now if I didn't have like anything that I have currently in my life likely would look very, very different if
Very
I didn't
different.
have the podcast. Yeah,
And especially with the topics you take on and on the happiness happens, right?
exactly.
Certainly. And I've listened to a whole bunch of those, and it's great stuff to actually kind of start thinking through those things that I'll say it. I don't always think through that kind of stuff. I kind of muddle my way through things, and then when I really think about those things, it's very helpful. So that'll be great to relaunch that. But that's it's great to hear, because I do struggle with this a little bit on just in
Mm,
terms of the podcast, and I think it's something that you want to produce something that people want to hear, but then again, you want to just bring your voice to the discussion and do it the way you
exactly.
want to do it, because I kind of fit in between a lot of different things. So
Exactly.
that's what I'm doing, and if hopefully it's some stuff is going to take and people want to hear it, and we'll just
100%.
keep moving with it. So
Gary,
the
I'm a huge, huge, huge believer in that your listener, your audience can only learn what they need to learn from you in the exact way that you are going to deliver it.
True,
You
it's a good
can
point.
have a similar type of podcast as somebody else, but they will not think about the things that you think about. They may not have the guests that you bring on. They might not be having the type of conversations that you're having. And also, the people that you meet and the connections you make, who knows where that's going to go. When I launched my podcast, when I launched my agency in 2021, some of my very first clients were past guests that I had on my podcast. I
Hmm.
never expected that they would be launching a podcast with me. That wasn't even in my awareness, right?
Hmm.
So, how do we create a show that we're proud of by sharing a message that is important to us, but then also being open to the unexpected, being open to the things that we can't even see, that we don't even know are in front of us yet?
Hmm. It's good stuff. Your
Thank you.
perspective on this stuff is absolutely spot on, and
Thank you.
it's great to hear that on this show. But like I said, your voice is all over the place. So keep preaching it.
Thank you. I
So,
will.
so let's talk a little bit more about the company real quick. Let's just talk
Mhm.
about leadership challenges and rewards in
Mm.
guiding you. Now you've got to guide clients through this, right? So, this is why I think your perspective is so interesting. That you just gave the perspective as kind of somebody's running a podcast, but you're running a business and trying to get people through this process.
Mhm.
And so, what have you learned about leadership, and what leadership techniques and what challenges have you faced? Let's just talk a little bit how you've turned that around and turned that into being a leader of a company that helps people produce podcasts.
Okay, leadership has been a really interesting thing for me to learn. Not because it's in some ways it's difficult and in some ways it's not, but I've really had to rely and to lean on my own personal values to be a good leader. The typical, things. Speak to people how you want to be spoken to. But I think more than that is being able to approach stressful situations with clarity and with calm.
Right.
Because if you're a leader and you are leading a team, or you are a leader trying to close business, or you're trying to do something client facing, if your energy is chaotic and you are all over the place, other people will see that and they're going to be like,
That's right.
"Ooh, I don't want that. I don't want to be part of a team that's chaotic. I don't want to be part of, you know, I don't want to be part of a business that isn't organized." And so I think a lot of it really comes down to how are we as leaders regulated in our own nervous system to be able to make sound decisions and communicate what we need done and how we need it done in a way that is the most effective. So it's taking the time to learn, how your team, how your clients, how your customers learn, how they receive information, and what it is that they're looking for. I always made like a vow and a promise to myself, especially in my business, that I wouldn't task my team with things that they didn't want to do. Like, of course, we always have to do things that we don't want to
Yeah.
do.
Right.
But I didn't want to make the bulk of their work stuff that they hated. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Because when you do
Mm-hmm.
that and you have the wrong people in the wrong positions, it changes the culture, right? It
It sure
changes
is.
all of it. And then your final product is impacted, the outward communication, the client facing communication is impacted. So when I think about leadership, I really, really, truly believe that it comes down to our own regulated nervous system, and then how we take our own thoughts and our own messages and support other people, right? How and why is it so difficult to be human, to have kindness, to show empathy, not in a way of like letting people get away with stuff where they shouldn't. Holding people accountable is really important,
Mm-hmm.
but you need to be able to do that with empathy and with an understanding perspective, because I just think that, Gary, I really think about this as something that might be a little left field maybe right now, but I'm going to say it anyways. Anytime I ever get overwhelmed, anytime I ever think that, oh my gosh, all this stuff is happening, because nothing is perfect, right? There's always challenge,
True.
there's always struggle, there's always going to be something. I always remind myself, I really try and zoom out, and I remind myself that we are on a spinning globe in the middle of nowhere. And so if I'm going to spend my time here, how do I want to spend it?
Right.
Right? A lot of the stuff that we make big issues and big problems really are not that big when you zoom out and when you dial it in. A lot of them can be, right? But then I go back to, how do you regulate yourself? So I'm not sure that 100% answers the question. And if it doesn't, just let me know, because I can elaborate more. But
No,
that's my thought.
that's the beauty of leadership and teaching leadership and coaching leadership. And what I'm trying to get everybody's take on it's a little different, right? And I think
Yeah.
the goal of these podcasts is to give people takeaways and actionable insights into what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think everybody's take on leadership is important, because as we talked with Caroline Baird,
Yeah.
who I know you know very well,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little different, right, for everybody, but it's not something people think about teaching
Yeah.
all the time. It's not taught well. She works with managers, leaders who are promoted because they were good at what they did, but there's not a lot of support sometimes for
Mm-hmm.
leadership. And I have been taught leadership because I coached it for 20 years,
Yeah.
but a lot of people don't have that kind of just mindset and that that foundation of what leadership is and how it could help. So everybody's take on it's
Yeah.
different. I was probably taught a little different than you were, than Caroline was, or whatever, but I have my take on it too. So no,
Mm-hmm.
that is very helpful, and your outlook comes from your experiences, which are different from everyone, and that's the
It's
value in it.
so
So
true. It's so true. And I mean, I say this with my stepkids, and I say this with my team. I say this in, corporate clients, small business client, entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. When you're creating something or when you're doing something, my biggest thing, and I think of my stepkids when I say this, like, did you hear what the other person said? Because people will say what they think and what they feel, but are you actually hearing? Right?
yeah,
Listening and understanding what people are saying, even if you disagree, create space for a different conversation, for a potentially different outcome, and to go exactly where you need to be. So if you're going to sit and say, well, my opinion is always right, I only my beliefs are right, you've literally just done your whole self and your whole team a disservice, because you're
right,
not being open to the possibility of what could be. Now, there are things in life that are solid, that are, yes, this is right, this is wrong. You can get into a lot of trouble, you know what I mean? Especially in business, if you don't follow certain rules. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying like go rogue and break all the rules, but just think about how the way you communicate impacts other people. And that is so, so, so key. Like, you want a podcast that's going to resonate with other people, tap into the emotions and the feelings that they're feeling. And
right.
that's going to create more of a relationship between all parties.
Yep. No, absolutely. And this is kind of totally shifting gears a little bit, but
Yeah.
it be
Sorry.
no. My comment's going to shift gears a little bit because I'm
Oh, okay.
thinking when you're saying that though, I'm thinking of it from a large company perspective,
Mm-hmm.
where leadership is driven by maybe short-term results, right, and
Yes.
short-term goals, and that empathy and that client empathy and the empathy for the employees is how shall we say obstructed by
Non-existent. No, I'm just kidding.
what's that?
I said non-existent. No, I'm just
No,
kidding. I'm just joking.
the, no, but you know what I'm saying, right? It is sometimes that's what's getting in the way
Mm-hmm.
of that kind of human touch and that connection. It's that short-term goals and you have to do the way you have to do it.
Yeah.
And that's just it. And don't tell me I'm wrong or else, because there's the door.
100%. But then also, how does that change you asking, hey, Gary, how are you today? Oh,
Right.
I'm good. Da, da, da. No, but like, how are you really today?
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be surface level, but
It,
that those shifts start, like, you change culture, you change all of that by just changing yourself first. And you can't change other people. You can't be responsible for how other people do. But a lot of the times, if you are going to lead and you're leading by an example that other people also want to lead by, people are like, hold on, this person, Gary, seems way happier. Gary seems way more chill. Gary seems way more excited to do this project, even though the deadline was yesterday. You know what I mean? You start to shift, and then everything else starts to shift with you.
no, true, and that's what I always try to bring to the table. But it becomes very difficult when there's a culture of an organization that you can't single-handedly change. You can change your little world that
1000%.
you're right. You can change your little world you're working in, but that overall overarching pressure that everybody's feeling, and we've talked about this a number of times, doing more with less or doing the same with less, or the deadlines and the cost constraints around doing something correctly or the time constraints.
Exactly.
When you're working with less or less people, it weighs on people, so it does change things. So it comes a little bit harder, but that's a totally different episode.
I know. We need to do a part two. I might not. I'm like, I'm very like, I'm like, but you know what, Gary? Like, we could just still do it. You know what I mean? But
Wait, no,
that's why I don't work in a corporation. We work with corporations, but I don't work in corporations
right.
because, yeah.
And no, but I get it, of course, because I get the pressures from that perspective, and there's other things besides clients, and there's
Exactly.
things and shareholders and fun things to deal with. But it just becomes part of the challenge, right? Okay, we are gonna do my favorite segment. Does it hold water? And if you're new to the show, Does It Hold Water is basically where our guest plays our resident expert, our expert witness. So you are our expert Mona Lisa Vito today, and I will read you a quote from a thought leader. And you will have the opportunity to agree or disagree. Does it hold water, or does the defense case have a few holes in it? Okay.
Eh.
All right. Yeah, and my guest has no idea what I'm asking them. And
I'm so
believe me,
excited.
you have no idea what I'm asking you.
Oh no, I'm so excited. Okay.
All right. Your question is from an Italian thought leader. Okay.
Ooh,
There you go.
very fitting.
Your quote comes from Marcus Aurelius. And about 2,000 years ago, he said, very little is needed to make a happy life.
Hmm.
It is all within yourself in your way of thinking.
I agree. I agree with that wholeheartedly, because the life that we create on the outside is a reflection of how we feel about ourselves on the inside. And I believe that we get to do a lot of things in life. We get to have businesses, work in corporations, have consulting businesses, have, marriages and children and houses and all of the things, vacations, all of the stuff, right? And there's no negating that those things bring us a lot of joy. But there's also people who have all that stuff that are probably some of the most unhappy people you could ever meet, who don't have gratitude for the things that they have, who always want more and it never feels like enough. And so I believe, just based off of all the conversations I've had about happiness in my life and the work that I've done on myself and the people that are in my life that I surround myself with, the way that you think about yourself, the way that you feel about yourself, and the work that you do on yourself will continue to make you feel more at peace. For me, the definition of happiness is inner peace. And so if you want a happy life, how do you make the inside of you the most peaceful that it can be? So I agree. And the defense rests.
That's right. My first reaction to this was easy for him to say. He was the goddamn emperor of Rome. So but I thought it was actually perfect for you, because I think what he's getting at is just that, the material things. Hey, I'm the emperor of Rome, and that's not really what matters, right?
Exactly.
So that was a very interesting one. So great job.
I
I
like
like that.
Thank you. That's a
All
good
right.
one. I like that a lot.
Yeah. So now we go to chip shots, which is my kind of short but more personal yet professional questions that I
Okay.
ask most of my guests. And I think one great one for you is, you've got to have one. Everybody seems to like the question about the book. What is one book that has influenced you either professionally or personally that you would
Hmm.
recommend to the audience?
Right off the bat, I want to say Mel Robbins' Let Them Theory.
Oh yeah.
That book, it's a brand new book. It just came out in December, and I am obsessed with it. Have you read it or heard of it?
No, I know Mel Robbins, and that voice is velvet. Like she does unbelievable podcasts and
And her
the
audiobook is
radio.
so good.
Oh
I'm an
yeah.
audiobook kind of girl. It's hard for me, obviously podcasting, but it's hard for me to like sit down and read. I have to be really intentional about that. But I really love everything that she shared in her book because I think we get so wrapped up on a day to day basis about everything that everybody else is doing. And the idea and the theory is okay, well, other people are going to do what they're going to do. Let them. So it's let them and let me, right? So let them be chaotic. Let them go and do that. Let them be upset. And then let me still find joy. Let me still do what I'm going to do, anyways. Let me continue to lead my life in the way that I want to. Let people have the tantrum that they're going to have. And then let me continue to do my life in the way that I'm going to do it. It's like the most freeing thought, especially if you're someone that cares a lot or cares deeply about what other people think about them.
Yeah, she seems real good. I got to listen to her
Mm.
more, but she is something. So that's an interesting one. Um, but Mel Robbins is definitely someone to put on the list. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
All right, is there a particular experience or failure early in your career that taught you a valuable lesson that you still use today?
Hmm. Yeah, there is. So when I worked in corporate, um, I I wanted to be liked. Like that was something for me
Yeah,
that was really important.
right.
And as I've sort of, you get older, you do different things and you realize, well, not everyone is going to like you and people are always going to try and tear you down, right?
Hmm.
So when I worked in corporate, I got myself into a situation where we had one of the leaders had to resign because there was a lot of unhinged slash like illegal things that had happened.
Oh Jesus!
And I won't go into details because I'll probably get like a cease and
Please
desist,
don't.
but I won't. And so, anyways, I remember telling, my boss about those specific things. And then before I knew it, I was getting written up and I was trying to get fired. Like they were trying to fire me.
Oh Jesus!
And I wasn't in the wrong. And still to this day,
I swear.
I was never in the wrong, which is why I never ended up getting fired from that job. But it taught me that we can't always trust people with the things that we know, you know what I mean? And so being very mindful of what other people's interests are in your life and are people going to take some of that stuff and turn it around against you? It just helped me I used to be someone who would share all things to all people, not in a malicious way, just in like a more of like an anxiety way, if you will.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I do know what you mean.
yeah. And so I learned in that not everyone has your best interests at heart. And it's okay to keep some things close, and not everyone needs to know everything. And you'll actually find more joy and more peace and more fulfillment when you don't overshare on all of the things that other people don't genuinely care about.
Wow, that's a great one.
Thank you.
That's a really
Thank
good
you.
one.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so this one's right up your alley. What's
Mm.
one habit or routine that you've cultivated over the years that believe contributes to your success?
Ooh, anxiety. No, I'm just kidding.
Anx- Managing anxiety. That is important to
You know what
success.
it is? It is
Oh, I
important.
know all about managing anxiety.
The panic that sets in. No, I'm just kidding. I would say one thing that I've always loved and never really prioritized before, but started to prioritize a lot as I continue to get older, was walking. I love to walk. So I make sure I walk on my walking pad every day. And when I was working in corporate at one of the jobs that I had, I'll never forget this. I used to go for walks at lunch, and I remember my manager screaming at me, like yelling at me, because I was wasting my time going for walks on my lunch. And I remember
Oh,
just being
geez.
like, that is so crazy to me because this is where you recharge and you reset. It was just so wild to me. So, anyways, I would say walking has been a really important one. And it really allows me to take all the thoughts and all the chaos that's in my mind and just like settle it down so that I can be more grounded and more present.
Yeah, no, that's how I try to start my day. Now when I woke up, it was about 19 degrees
No, thank you.
Fahrenheit, and it's
No, thank
windy.
you.
So it was. And
Uh-uh.
I like to walk first thing in the morning, and I don't like the gym first thing in the morning, but I force myself to go. And I said, this
Good.
is why I have the gym membership. Go. But I really just wanted to do my walk. And I didn't go to the gym, and I was debating whether or not I was going to walk this morning. And my wife went out after the youngest was on the bus, and she went out and she walked. And I said, well, damn it, I'm not letting her outdo me. I'm doing my walk this morning. And she texts me while I'm walking. She said, you're out walking too? And I said, I'm not going to be outdone by you. That's for sure. But she's found the same thing this year, right? I told you before we started recording, she lost some weight, but she started walking every morning. And
That's amazing.
that's what she does after the little guy gets on the younger one as school later, the older guy. So she started doing it, but that's where I get a lot of my ideas and everything. I just start walking. This is where I'm listening to a lot of podcasts
Yep.
and you, and then I get the ideas and I'm walking and I'm going, oh crap. So what I have to do is actually just record on the phone. So there I am walking around my neighborhood, talking into my phone to, think about a blog post or an episode. And I come up with all these ideas as I'm walking,
Yep.
but I love
It's
it.
the
Yeah.
best.
First thing in the morning, or I hit golf balls first thing in the morning in the nice weather, but that's it's not out of the
That's a bit of a
question.
stretch.
Well,
It's a bit
we
of a
do have
stretch.
covered bays at my club, so they
It
don't
feels
open
cold.
till later night. So
It feels cold
it
to
is
me.
awful. It is absolutely awful these past few days. So, all right. Let's go with one more.
Okay.
I'm going to ask this one because I haven't asked this one yet. I've had it out there.
Ooh.
I'm going to see, you might like this one. If you could spend a day shadowing a leader or professional in any industry, who would it be and what would you hope to learn?
Ooh. Wow, that really makes me think. I think that I would want to shadow the founder of Spanx that's now sold, because I just like her story. And I
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I cannot remember her name. I'm terrible. Like, even like actors and stuff, I can never
That's
remember their
fine.
names. But I love her story. She started on, she started later on in life. And I just like her energy and like her values and the idea that you can continue to create things and to be seen and to be bold and to try new things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would love to learn how to scale to that level
Right.
in a way that preserves your kindness and like your own, like who you are as a person, and not getting swept away and all of the extra stuff.
Right. Because as you expand, the harder it is to do. Well, the more you expand, the harder it is to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's a good
Exactly.
one. Brilliant.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Really good question.
I think I'd start asking that one more.
You should. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
So those were great. Thank you, Simona. So why don't, now you're all over the place, kid. So I'll let you tell everybody where they can find you. And if you can't find Simona, you got a problem, because she is all over the place on multiple social media platforms, but I'll let you have at it.
Thank you. So the easiest way would be voltproductions.co, VOLT productions.co. All of my links are on there, so you can find me through there. I'm also on LinkedIn. My name is Simona Costantini, COS, Costantini. On Instagram as well. I dabble on TikTok, but whatever. And I'm also on YouTube as well. So any of those places, if you want to talk about your podcast, a potential idea for a show that you have, if you're a corporation thinking that you want to start one, but you don't know where to start, please send me a message and I would love to chat with you.
And I absolutely can't encourage you enough, if you're thinking of starting a podcast, to reach out to Simona. Absolutely wonderful conversation. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your support of this podcast. And we hope to talk to you again real soon.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye for now. Tune in real soon. We'll be talking to some customer success management thought leaders and some CX leaders real soon. So those are the next few episodes coming out in the next few weeks. All right. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you all real soon. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you found something insightful that will enhance your experiences and drive your success. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review and share your thoughts to help us improve the show. Don't forget to head on over to marracxhub.com for more ways to connect with me and learn more about experience management. Until next time, I'm Gary Marra, working hard for your customer and your success.